Hello and welcome. It's Morgana here, and as the weather is growing ever colder here in the UK, I decided it was high time I painted some of this year's Christmas cards. So here is the first. This is going to be a lovely, simple, snowy scene that I'm hoping some of you will enjoy replicating for your own Christmas cards this year. I'm beginning, as always, with a medium hake brush to just lightly wet the paper and the area that I'm going to do a wash for the sky. You can see I've just penciled in a few outlines, including my people, a hill and a small building there. The roof is blue because I have masked it out using my masking fluid or drawing gum. The make is a Pebeo, spelled where is it? Pebeo. It's very good. You can buy it online from most art suppliers or retailers. I believe I got mine from Jackson's online art shop, and I've just used it to mask out the roof of the building which I want to be snowy. You can see I am beginning this sky wash with a combination of Payne's grey and ultramarine blue. That's what this is for this lovely drift of sort of grey-blue sky that is so indicative of more snow to follow. For those of you wondering, the paint is drifting quite readily down my paper because I have my paper set on a drawing board at a roughly 45-degree angle, so quite steep, which is encouraging the paint to drift and to combine, where you can see I'm leaving some brush strokes, but they are vanishing due to the wet paint and the tendency to drift down the paper. You can see I'm using quite a lot of paint and quite a lot of water here, just to really get the colour that I'm looking for in the sky. Just want that lovely grey, sort of almost leaden sky, but still bright. I know that sounds like a contradiction almost, but those of us who are familiar with sort of snowy skies, I think you know what I mean. Whether or not I've actually achieved it here, I'll leave it up to you to decide. You can see I'm using just a damp brush to pull out the water that has collected at the bottom of my sky wash. This is a good technique to use. It's I think better than tissue, which is another way you can do it, just sort of mopping it up, obviously, soaking up that water. But whatever technique you decide to use, you really sort of don't want to leave that line of water there. Otherwise, as your paint dries, the wetness will bloom back into the colour along the top and cause marks called cauliflowers, little blooms of strangeness, which, whilst useful when used with proper effect, are not what we want here. So you can see now I'm just using my hake brush again. I've got it sort of, I'd say, about half loaded with water. This is the water from my paint palette with the remains of the blue and grey paint in it. You can see it's very, very pale, and I'm using it to lightly dry brush the hill, the lovely snowy hill. Obviously snow is white, so it's rather difficult to paint. So what I'm doing here is making sure I leave lots of white paper and just a little bit of impression. this is my palette, and you can see this is almost, it's sort of, rather than watery paint, I'd say it's painty water that I'm using here for this dry brushing. I hope some people find this useful. You can see here, this is the rough outline of my little house that I still have. And I'm just using some scrunched up tissue, and I'm going to pull a little bit of the sty wash out, leaving behind some white paper to signify some smoke rising from the chimney. I know it's hard to see the outline of the little house under the wash, but trust me, it's there. And here we go. This is now dry. You can see my paint has slightly buckled, my paper, sorry. It's not too bad. And now I am just removing the masking fluid. Just using one finger, it's honestly as easy as that. Just rub it straight off the paper, brush it aside, and there we go. I've got a lovely flat, snowy roof for my house. And now I'm using a fine brush to fill in the house shape behind the hill. I'm using the same mixture of paint that you saw on my palette a moment ago. So this is a lovely mix of Payne's grey and ultramarine blue. That's this lovely sort of dark blue-grey, sort of lovely wintry colour, I think. And I'm just bringing it down from the roof. I want to have it a little darker, a little bit higher up. Obviously the roof overhang is going to leave a shadow on that wall there, which is what I'm trying to convey by having it lighter coloured lower down the wall, if that makes sense. I know I don't always explain myself as well as I should, but I hope that that makes sense to somebody at least. And of course, by doing that little bit of shading whilst the paint was wet, getting a lovely diffusion of colour there, which means no sort of harsh or hard marks. And now just doing the other side of the house that's visible. You see just lots of gentle little marks there, little strokes down, and then popping a little bit of stronger paint along the top and letting that run down into those lines that I've made, not filling up the entire space, leaving a little bit of white. I think it looks much better than just doing a sort of flat wash of colour for these things. And of course, we can't forget the chimney. So now it's time to put the figures in. These are going to be very simple, abstract figures. You can see I'm just going straight in with sort of a side-to-side wiggling motion of my fine detail brush. I find this the best way to get shapes that look sort of informal but are still definitely a person, if you know what I mean. I know that sounds a bit silly, but figures in landscapes are notoriously easy to get wrong, to look stilted, formal, or just plain blobby. So that's what I'm trying to avoid today with these lovely carrot figures, I believe I heard somebody refer to them as. Which seems rather appropriate. Again, I'm using exactly the same colours here. I'm using my Payne's grey and ultramarine blue, just to sort of to do the shadow of them more than anything. Just want to get those shapes roughed in and get a little bit of shading on there. For this scene, I decided to do a parent and child figure. Obviously, you could modify in your own painting the size of the shapes, what they're wearing, you know, all that sort of thing to be more personal to you. But I decided these two figures would look rather charming climbing this little hillside here. And as you can see now, I'm just sketching in the sled. I decided to put a sort of, you know, a sort of old-fashioned wooden sled. So I've introduced a little bit of raw umber into my palette. That's the colour I'm using. And I've mixed it carefully with my Payne's Grey and Ultramarine Blue combo, just to sort of pull that colour down a little bit, make it a bit more muted. And you can see it's still got enough brown to denote wood, but it's not sort of leaping out of the painting at you. It's still sort of, the colours harmonise, I think, with everything else, which is important. You can see just gently outlining, and there we go. That's my colour that I'm using. So now I'm going in and using those same colours on my palette, just add a little bit of extra shadow. My figures have dried, so I'm just putting a little bit of a darker line down one side to denote where the light is coming from. And now you can see I'm just using the same fine detail brush and that same colour pool that I'm pulling from on my palette to just do these very simple little trail of footsteps going up the hill, or rather going down the hill as I'm working from the top downwards. You can see I'm keeping them in line with each other, the steps, but I am making them larger. The closer we get to the bottom of the hill, i.e. the closer we get to the camera, the sort of invisible camera that's taking this snapshot of these people's lives. And as the child figure is obviously smaller, has shorter little legs, I'm doing their footsteps a little smaller and closer together, because obviously they would take shorter strides than the adult. You don't need to worry too much about doing actual sort of, you know, the classic sort of figure of 8 boot print here, because this is more of an abstract sort of impression of footsteps. So just a little sort of a wiggly line will do the trick. And now I'm using a flat brush. This is a 1 centimetre flat brush, and using that same colour, it's essentially still just painty water really, to go on the snow and give the impression of the track made by dragging the sled up the hill as well, because of course we can't forget that. There we are, that's all fully dried now. And now I'm going to introduce a couple of trees into the picture. And lovely wintry trees with bare branches, which are some of the most exciting to draw, because you actually get to draw the branches rather than just sort of blobbing on leaves. So I'm using my raw umber here and a little bit of burnt umber as well, and I will be using Payne's Grey to darken this tree down as well. But for now I'm just using a flat brush. This is my 1/2 centimetre flat brush, and I'm just using it to rough in the vague outline of the main branches. And now I'm back to using my smaller brush, the fine detail brush, to put in some smaller branches. You can see I'm just carefully drifting them off the larger branches there, not being too precious about where I put them, using a sweeping motion with my hand to get a nice sort of natural flick to the branches, make them look lovely and natural and windswept and wintry, which is, after all, what we really want for a Christmas card. Obviously, the more of these sort of lovely little sort of twiggy branches I build up, the larger and denser the tree will begin to look. You see I'm dipping back into my palette, and I've just put in some lovely Payne's grey over the brown, and that's running down and darkening the tree a little, making it stand out against the sky a bit more. As I go on with the tree, I'm going to be alternating between the Payne's grey and burnt umber. It's going to be my main colour for this tree. I'll be dipping back between each colour on my palette and working them together to get this lovely wintry effect. There we are, that's the finished tree. I'm using the same colour here. You can see I'm just taking advantage of what's on my palette. I decided to just put a few dark accents onto the snow sled, just to really bring that to the fore, make it pop out from the background a little bit more. And see, you can always go back in and add little bits and bobs on top. There we go, just like that, another tree. Decided 2 trees would work well for the symmetry of this piece. I did it using exactly the same technique as you just saw. And I decided now to put a little pop of colour onto my figures. So I'm using light red to gently sort of sketch in the child's red jumper or coat or jacket, whatever you want it to be. And I didn't want to use the same colour for both figures, so I'm going back into my ultramarine and giving the adult figure a nice cosy ultramarine blue coat or jacket. And you can see here that I'm also just darkening the colours a little bit. Well, not so much darkening as making them less bright, which is a different thing, but sounds the same. But you know what I mean, I'm sure. Just using a little bit of paint water and Payne's grey just on one side to give the impression of shadow and shape. And now for some finishing touches. I decided to add some birds because those of you who know me will know I am bird mad. So for this wintry scene and these lovely sort of bare trees, I decided to add some crows. So this is Payne's grey with a fine brush, just doing in these little raggedy V shapes. These are quite sort of tight pinched in V shapes for the crows for the most part, and I'm making sure to slightly feather the wings and the wingtips just to set them aside from, you know, the typical dull pose. Crows have got thicker and darker and shorter wings, so make sure to show that here even when they're in silhouette. And there we are, some more crows. And I'm just showing you also how to add in some crows perched on branches as well. You can see I'm doing sort of almost a little oval shape with a sort of a pointy triangle at the top and a small pointy triangle at the bottom, which denotes the head and the tail feathers. These crows are perched looking to the right with their sort of backs to the tree, so to speak. I imagine them looking down on the little figures below, probably hoping for some food. Well, at least if I know anything about birds, that's most likely what they're up to. I suspect I have probably put too many birds in this scene, but that's a me problem. You know, you don't have to do the same thing. And now just the last finishing touch, I'm just going to soften down the smoke coming from this chimney. I decided it looked a little bit too white and sort of too much like a Muppet hand, the shape. I know that sounds silly, but you know when you look at something you think, no, I can't stand that. So I'm going to put in a bit of extra shadow, going to put in a little bit of extra grey. So I'm just dampening it down, wiping it down carefully with some tissue, and now I'm going to put in a little bit of very dilute Payne's grey over the top and just sort of blend it in and lightly dab it out with the tissue to get some lovely smoky effects. As some of you may have realised by now as well, I'm painting this on paper that is A4 in size, which is admittedly not the habitual size we use for Christmas cards. That's because I wanted to do this in a larger size to get more detail, to be able to show you guys more clearly how to achieve certain looks, certain effects, which you can then scale down for your own cards and replicate on whichever size you choose, be it A4, A5, A6, you know, whatever size card blanks you have or decide to use. And there we have it. This is the finished painting. I think this would make a wonderful Christmas card for somebody. I really hope you guys enjoyed watching the tutorial. Let me know if you think I did too many crows in this one. I think I probably did, but I'll leave it for you to judge. Please like and subscribe to my channel for more art from me. And I know it's a little early to be saying this, but Merry Christmas, everybody. There, I said it in November. Oh dear. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.